What's up, YouTube? In this video, I want to talk about Magic Johnson. Alright? Magic Johnson was able to do some things that in his career, which was essentially 12 and a half seasons, he was able to do some things that were almost unparalleled. Alright? Now, Magic is the consensus GOAT point guard. But Magic Johnson's overall status has taken a slight hit, in my opinion. He's become somewhat underrated in the last 10 to 15 years. I remember as recently as the early 2000s, there are many people who still put Magic Johnson in the argument for GOAT. I no longer see this argument. Now I see people generally talk about only Jordan, LeBron James, and the older generation will bring up Will Chamberlain. And it's like that. I never really see any serious arguments anymore for Abdul-Jabbar, which is ridiculous because when you encompass college, NBA, or pro, in high school, he has the strongest case of any player in history as being the GOAT. But I want to focus on Magic Johnson in this video. Magic Johnson unfortunately retired at the age of 32 due to the announcement that he had been diagnosed with the HIV virus. I have to be honest with you, at the time of his announcement, I think it was November the 8th of 1991, I didn't think that Magic would live out the rest of the 1990s. As Arsenio Hall said, you didn't say it, but you thought Magic was going to get skinny and then die. You gotta understand, in the 1980s, the HIV virus was much more potent than it is now. I have my theories as to why the virus has decayed so fast, but this isn't that video for that. But in the 1980s, AIDS was a very potent killer. It was compared to the bubonic plague of the middle centuries. The HIV virus now is not what it once was 30 years ago. It's not as even the structure of it's not as potent. Now, it's still a killer if you don't treat it, but if you treat it now with the medications that they have now, you can live almost a normal life. But that wasn't the case back in 1991, and many of us thought that Magic wouldn't be around for much longer. But here he is, around 27 years later. But when Magic Johnson announced his retirement at the age of 32 at that time, look at what he was able to accomplish. He came to the NBA fresh off a collegiate championship against Larry Bird and an Indiana State team. And he was able, at that young age, at age 20, to excel in that first season. He brought an excitement to the game. He brought an excitement that had been missing, an enthusiasm. Don't get me wrong, Julius Earvin provided a big boost to the NBA. But Magic Johnson, along with Larry Bird, brought a rivalry and renewed interest into the league that was missing. And Magic Johnson was able to step on the stage, on the top stage, the NBA Finals, and in a pressure situation which most 20-year-olds cannot handle. Game 6, your team up 3-2, but you lose your best player, Abdul-Jabbar. All right, Abdul-Jabbar at the time was a reigning league MVP, I believe, and or Yeah, I think he had just been announced MVP, if I'm not mistaken, for the last time. The sixth time he won the MVP award, Abdul-Jabbar. He goes out, and he wouldn't have played the next two games. And the Philadelphia 76 look like, hey, we're down 3-2, but we're going to come back, and the last two games are at our place. We're going to come back, and we're going to win this series. We're going to win our first title. Magic Johnson said, oh, hell no, you will. Play center. A point guard playing center position? This is going to be a joke. The Sixers are going to blow the Lakers out at home. Magic Johnson gets 42 points. I think something like 15 rebounds, 7 assists. It wasn't just the numbers. He controlled the tempo of that game. And the Lakers won the championship. Then they won their second title, 82, against the Sixers again. So by the age of 3, Magic Johnson already has 2 NBA championships. And Magic Johnson asserts his dominance. He becomes the Lakers. He becomes the alpha male on that team. Now he faces adversity in 1984. Teams begin to focus on the fact that Magic, as great a player as he is, he has weaknesses. His biggest weakness, he wasn't a good jump shooter. And the Boston Celtics exploit that weakness. Magic Johnson also uncharacteristically turns the ball over in pressure situations, make bad decisions as far as passing the ball, turnovers, misses shots, and Boston overcomes the deficit and wins the series in 7. So what does Magic Johnson do? He works like hell to never again fail on the stage, on the big stage. He adds to his game. He develops a decent mid-range jump shot. He works on his post game, develops the baby skyhook that he would showcase 1987 in the 1987 finals against the Boston Celtics, when he hit one of the biggest shots in the history of the NBA Finals. Eventually, by the late 80s into the 90s, Magic Johnson develops a set shot 3-point shot. Was he Chris Mullin? No. But he now expanded his game from the early 80s, when he was mostly a slasher, didn't really have a jump shot, to the point where he had a decent mid-range shot, to the point where now Magic Johnson can hurt you from outside. One year shoots 38% from beyond range. That's what great players do. They work on their weaknesses. Magic Johnson came into the league an average foul shooter, about 75%. By the time he retires, Magic Johnson is one of the best free throw shooters in the league. In fact, one year he leads the NBA in free throw percentage. He becomes a 90% free throw percentage type guy. Magic Johnson beat everybody. Magic Johnson beat Julius Earvin. Magic Johnson beat Larry Bird. He beat Isaiah Thomas. He beat Michael Jordan. In the regular season. He used to beat Charles Barkley all the time. Anybody you name, the Lakers, I'm pretty sure had a winning record in 1980s against them. He won 3 MVP awards. Finished his career as a more dominant player than Larry Bird, who unfortunately injuries derailed his career. Still had a Hall of Fame career. But Magic Johnson was going strong when he had to retire due to the virus. Who knows what Magic Johnson could have accomplished if he was able to keep playing. By age 32, Magic Johnson had 9 NBA final appearances. By comparison, LeBron James, I believe, has had 9 final appearances, but he's 34. Plus, he didn't have the benefit of coming right into the NBA at age 18, which gave him a head start. Now, I understand some people say, well, yeah, but Magic played on loaded teams, yada, yada, yada. But, those Laker teams were pretty good in the 70s, but they still weren't able to get over the hump. But who knows what Magic Johnson could have accomplished if he was able to keep playing into the 90s? Who knew what those teams would have eventually became, who he could have drawn in free agency if Magic Johnson had continued to play at a high level. Now, Magic Johnson wasn't the greatest defensive player in the world. He wasn't awful. In fact, a couple of years he led the NBA in steals earlier on in his career when he gambled a little bit more defensively. But Magic Johnson improved overall in his defense. He became an above-average defender by I'd say, the late 1980s. Lockdown defender, no, but he was an above-average defender. And contrary to popular opinion, Magic Johnson did have competition that he played against in that position. All right, he wasn't playing against a bunch of scrubs night in, night out. I remember hearing that some idiot said that on television one time, and I said, why is there a call-in show? All right, because Magic Johnson in that position had to go up against Isaiah Thomas. All right, he had to go up against John Stockton. He had to go up against Derek Harper. He had to go up against Norm Nixon. He had to go up against Gus Williams. Many people don't even know who the hell Gus Williams was. All right, look at the finals in 1970s with the Seattle Supersonics. You know who Gus Williams was. Great scoring point guard. Very good defensive player. He had to go up against Mark Jackson, Sidney Moncrief, Sleepy Floyd, Fat Lever, Nate Archibald. Just popping in my head. I don't even have a list of teams to look at. I'm just thinking of guys. All right? There's some people who I'm not even thinking of right now. Dennis Johnson. So to say that Magic Johnson having competition to go up against, not to mention the top tier teams that to play against on a more nightly basis than Michael Jordan did with the Chicago Bulls. And I'm a big Jordan fan, but I'm not a fanboy, and I keep having to tell you guys that. There's a big case to be made for Magic Johnson. Now, am I saying that he is the GOAT? No, I'm not saying that. But there's a case to be made for him. In 12 years, Magic Johnson did so much. I mean, on an individual basis and team success-wise. So, and there's this. I'm still not convinced if in 1989, if he didn't go down with injury and Byron Scott didn't go down with injury, whether or not they would have won a 6th title in '89. They were rolling in that year before Magic went down with the injury. The Lakers were 11-0 going into that finals. I still to this day think they would have won the title. But, hey, that's what it could have, should have. But I still think that Magic Johnson is in the discussion when it comes to GOAT. That's just me.